starting us off in at number 10 is cast members who get to experience the rides after dark. And by get to, I mean have to. They're absolutely forced to. Well, apparently some of these rides are absolutely 100% haunted, especially It's a Small World. I remember I was stuck on that ride one time and I wanted to absolutely kill myself because it was so annoying. It was on repeat. It's so repetitive. Well, multiple cast members have reported seeing the little animated dolls blink or appear in entirely different places long after that they've been unplugged and switched off for the night. Honestly, there's just something about the ride that creeps me out, and a reason why I just won't go on this ride ever again. In at number 9 is the poor employee who had a little bit of a game with Walt Disney himself after he died. A bit of backstory. Whenever Walt was at the parks, the staff would always make sure that the light in the window of the fire station was turned on to let everyone know, you know, Walt's here, let's be on our best behavior. Well, once he died, they turned off the lights. But one day, a staff member was cleaning the room where the lamp was, and they saw that it was turned on. She turned it off, turned around, and when she turned back, it was switched on again. This would freak me out. She again turned it off. I wouldn't do that. I would just run like crazy, not look back, put in my resignation, and I'd probably go work for Microsoft or something. Well, something inside her was telling her that Walt was letting her know that, hey, I'm still here. I'm still much alive in this park. Well, since then, the lights always stay on to let everyone know that Walt is looking down on the parks. So everyone there better be on their best behavior. Following up, at number 8 is when a Disney employee noticed that there was a mysterious box chained to a lamppost. Anyone who's seen any type of crime shows know that if there's a mysterious package anywhere, it might be a bomb, and to clear the area and call 911. This employee jumped into action and did just that, because the last thing anybody wants is an active bomb in the happiest place on earth, filled with excited kids and their families. Turns out, thankfully, it wasn't a bomb, it was just some family's lunch, and they just didn't want to carry it around with them. But seriously guys, I don't understand wanting to carry your lunch around. I mean, at that point, just go out and buy lunch in a restaurant, just go buy a turkey leg somewhere. Well, I guess on this day, it would save a lot of people a lot of stress. Okay, next up, at number 7 spot is the employee who had to help break up a fight that could have ended really poorly. Apparently a group of 20-year-olds were getting rowdy and started punching each other in the arms, but one of them missed and ended up punching a 12-year-old girl right in the face. Is this real life right now? How do you mess that up? Which is, well, this is bad enough, but imagine doing that and then realizing that the little girl's dad is right there. It's like, and then right behind her is this big dude. Well, this guy, he was actually 6'4", over 300 pounds, and really mad. Like really mad. It literally took 4 security guards and 2 deputies to pull the dad off the guy who punched his daughter, but not after bloodying up himself. Number 6 today goes to a worker who might have told an exorcism at the Haunted Mansion. Apparently before the ride even opened up, an employee heard music coming from the walls of the seance room. Mysterious music is bad enough from any room, but a seance room? Especially when there are rumors that the spell book was a real one, which was once owned by witches. Well, that is class A nope material for me. Instead of cleansing the place, this employee decided to just install speakers to drown out the noise, but I guess whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess. Halfway through, and at number 5 is a staff member who discovered the body of a man who had died in his hotel room. I guess cleaning staff must have found him, but it was apparent that he had taken his own life. The room's windows and entrance were covered by those "Pardon our dust" signs. I've never seen that kind of sign before, like, pardon, we didn't clean this place, don't mind it. And there was an important meet and greet to distract people from the room as police arrived on the scene. No matter what I encountered in my life, I feel like finding someone else's body would probably be the scariest thing to happen. In at number 4 is the employee who had to stop a situation that could have ended a lot worse than it did. This group of drunk people were on the Dumbo ride with their infant when they decided that it would be a good idea to reenact The Lion King. Yeah, you guys know where I'm going with this one. You guys know what I'm talking about. Well, they took off the seatbelt of the kid, and they held their hands like Rafiki did to Simba during the Circle of Life. Well, the ride operator emergency stopped the ride, and the entire group was escorted out of the park and arrested as soon as they stepped out of the gates. So, did they have to wait until they were completely out of the park to be arrested? Because I would try to resist and never leave, like I would never try to cross that line of like Disney, exit, Disney, exit. Next up, number 3 is an employee who had to deal with a watery attack. Well, during a jungle cruise, everything was going pretty well until suddenly one lady entirely lost her cool at the guy sitting in front of her. Mind you, he hadn't done anything other than enjoy his ride because he's in the happiest place on earth. Well, she started to scream at him and then lunged at him, clawing his face and kicking him. The skipper on board had to fire 4 rounds from his pistol into the air to warn other boats, rushed back to the dock, and tried to pull the lady off of the guy. Well, apparently half the people on board were trying to help as well. When medical and security arrived, they finally got her secured and into an ambulance. Turns out she was schizophrenic and hadn't taken her medication that day, and unfortunately had an episode in the middle of the water. It's always sad when somebody has a mental illness that affects them like that. Like you're trying to enjoy your ride and all of a sudden you're having panic attacks, you're freaking out. But I can't even imagine how scary that would have been for staff and customers as well, who may not be experienced with understanding what that person is going through. Number 2 today goes to an employee who had to deal with the aftermath of something truly disgusting. Apparently in line at one of the rides, a fully grown man decided to take a poop in the corner of the pre-show, which is pretty damn disgusting, especially when you remember that Disney is filled with kids, and kids are curious, and they like to satisfy their curiosity by finding things and putting it in their mouth. Yeah, so one kid actually saw the poop and decided it was snack time. The mom rushed the kid to the staff washroom in a panic where the employees were just staring in shock. If I was the employee in that situation, I wouldn't do anything at all because I would just be in total shock. My mouth would just be like, is this real life right now? Did that guy really take a And finally, in a number 1 spot is a cast member who met their tragic end at one of the shows back in 1974. 18-year-old Deborah Gale Stone was working at the American Sings attraction at Disneyland at the end of the night. She got too close to the area of the stage by a moving wall and a stationary wall. And as the one wall moved, she got trapped between the two and it ended up being crushed. Nobody was in the theater with her, but the ride operator next door heard her screams and rushed to help. But unfortunately, they were too late. Eventually, the solid walls were replaced with, breakable ones to prevent a tragedy like this, one to prevent someone getting squished. I don't know who thought of this. There should be like a fail safe or like pressure sensors. Like, you know how you have a garage door and something's underneath it, it would go and then all of a sudden stop because there are sensors? Well, they definitely should have had one in place. Well, it was rumored that Deborah now haunts the attraction and now can be heard telling others to be careful.
Starting off this countdown, we have the lifeguards. So I came across this TikTok and apparently he used to be a lifeguard at Disney.
This is what Disney throws in the water to test their lifeguards. But what they don't tell you is that the lifeguards are told that they have to be constantly watching the water as if somebody's purposely trying to drown their child, because people apparently do that. Disney noticed that people would go there to drown their children on purpose so that they could sue Disney and they could get rid of their child at the same time. So Disney lifeguards are trained to look for that.
That is absolutely horrifying if he's telling the truth. It must be super stressful being a lifeguard at Disney. Like, their water parks and wave pools are always packed. It's so sad if that has actually happened. In our 9th spot, we have the deaths. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You know the drill, because it really helps us out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the other parts of the series. So Disney is very, very protective of its image. It wants to maintain that it's a safe and family-friendly place. So they claim that no one has ever died at their park, which is clearly false. Tons of accidents have happened at Disney World and Disneyland. Both visitors and workers have lost their lives at Disney. But their claim is 100% true. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates. They do this all so that families feel safe coming there, because if no one dies there, then clearly it's super safe. But still, this is pretty sketchy if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the injuries. Now, if you work for Disney as one of the characters and you get injured on the job, well, guess what? You can't receive medical assistance until you're out of the public's eye. This is just another crazy rule that Disney has. You have to stay in character no matter what. They all do this to preserve the illusion of Disney and magic. I mean, how horrifying would it be if all of a sudden Mickey rips off his head and starts like gushing blood in front of kids? Now, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that if for some reason he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards could remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow that. Moving on to number 7, we have the repairs. Ever notice how Disney is pretty much always in great condition? I mean, some of the rides are super old, but they don't look it. Well, according to a former Disney employee, every night workers go around the park touching up any and everything. During the day, the workers note if there's any graffiti anywhere in the park or if there's paint chipping anywhere. They write it down and let the night shift workers know, and then they go around fixing it all. I mean, I just took in that I've never seen graffiti at Disney, and that's exactly why. But also, it's a very tedious job. They have to go around the full park and get it all done before the park reopens in the morning. Moving on to number 6, we have the fire accident. So this next story comes from a Disney employee that worked as an outdoor vendor. One night while watching a fireworks show, Tinkerbell got stuck on the wire above the castle since she had been hoisted up because she was flying in the air. But her wire was stuck, and she almost burned to death up there. There was a whole Indiana Jones portion of the show, and in it they had large fireballs. Well, they couldn't stop the show to get Tinkerbell down, so they kind of just left her there and turned off her spotlight so no one could see what was going on, and then they prayed for the best. But like I said before, it's a risk you take while working for Disney. You know, you could be dying and they're not gonna save your life if it interferes with their show. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed ride. Believe it or not, but there is a ride at Disney that all workers believe is cursed. This is the Matterhorn. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and then died after being thrown out from the ride. Then another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and then hit by another bobsled. More on this later. You think they would have fixed this ride after the first couple of deaths, but no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should just kind of look into the safety of that ride, because I don't know if it's that safe. In our 4th spot, we have the Death on Space Mountain. Okay, this one is pretty dark. So in 1979, a woman died on the Space Mountain ride. She was only 31 at the time. So basically, after the ride was done, this woman didn't feel well at all, but she couldn't get out of her seat by herself. The ride operators were trying to get her out of her seat, but the other workers weren't notified, so they ended up sending her on the ride again. This time, when the ride was done, she was completely unconscious. It literally put her in a coma. She passed away a week later. Now, technically, this wasn't Disney's fault. I mean, part of it was. They had a lawsuit filed against them, but it was dismissed because apparently while on the ride, a tumor dislodged from her heart and then traveled to her brain. Yeah, I know, that's super scary. In our 3rd spot, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. So for those of you who don't know, Disney had a secret apartment. It was located just above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. This apartment was built so that he could watch the guests enjoy his creation without being overwhelmed by the crowds. Now, his apartment was so secretive that him and his family and special guests were the only ones allowed in there. In fact, photographers were rarely allowed inside. As a result, there are hardly any photos of Mr. Disney and his family in this place. Well, after the passing of Walt Disney in 1966, cast members decided to place a small lamp at the window. They keep the light on to symbolize that Disney's spirit is still alive at Disneyland. And this may be indeed true, because it's said that his ghost still haunts his apartment. A number of employees have seen Disney while cleaning the apartment. Apparently one worker was in there and then the lights started flickering on and off. Another worker said she heard a voice say, "Don't forget, I am still here." And that's when she probably quit, because that's terrifying. In our second spot, we have Dolly's Dip. So in 1984, Regina, otherwise known as Dolly Young, was riding on the Matterhorn when her seatbelt came undone. She was then thrown from the ride and hit and killed by another bobsled. Now, there's still much debate as to how her seatbelt came undone. Some say that she unbuckled it to help her children who were in another car. Others think that the seatbelt just wasn't buckled properly in the first place. Either way, this accident was super tragic. But that's not all. Now Disney employees claim that Dolly's spirit haunts the ride. The area in which she died is now called Dolly's Dip, and employees hate going there by themselves. Those that do have claimed to feel like someone is watching them. Others say that the lights in Dolly's Dip never work properly anymore. Now everyone kind of just avoids that area at all costs. And in our number one spot, we have the tragic accident. So this story was shared on Reddit by a man who once worked at Disney as a VIP tour guide. So he was in the city hall when two women came in with two little girls. One of the girls was in a wheelchair, the other girl looked very depressed. Both of them had cuts and bruises all over them. The two women with them were nurses from the hospital that the girls had just been to. They were there to ask for a refund for the girls' tickets. Now, here's where the story gets very sad. So apparently the girls had been with their mom and dad at Epcot, but on their way home they got in a really bad car accident. They both lost their parents in the crash. So the nurses had come to try and get a refund for the tickets so that the girls could get money to try and go home. Now, how dark is that? That's extremely sad. Starting off this countdown, we have the terrible situation. So according to this Disney employee, this incident took place on the 4th of July in 1995. On that day, there was a power glitch and all of the rides shut down at the same time. So all of them had to be evacuated, but that led to a pileup at the park. Everyone started panicking and trying to get out, especially this one guest who pulled out something sharp from their bag and started guests so that they could get out of the park. Thankfully, I don't think anyone died that day, but still, what a traumatic thing that they had to go through. In our ninth spot, we have the injuries. One Disney employee shared on Reddit how rough it truly is to be a Disney mascot character. I mean, not only do they have to wear those costumes out in the blazing heat, they also have to deal with whiny and bratty children and parents. And apparently, a lot of the time, they get injured. One time, a family attacked Pluto and pushed the character into the fountain. The employee suffered from a broken arm. In another instance, a woman playing Mickey Mouse suffered a bad neck injury after a guest kept patting her on the head. This caused the head to fall down and strain her neck. And the costumes themselves weigh 47 pounds. They're blamed for at least 282 injuries. So maybe just be gentle with them. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Come on, you know the drill, because it really helps us out. In our eighth spot, we have the working conditions. It's no shock that landing a job at Disney is very, very hard. Every year they receive thousands upon thousands of applications. But here's the thing, if you do land a job at Disney, you have to be very, very careful because you can easily be fired. Here's a list of ways you could get fired. For starters, you could get fired for coming to work looking unacceptable. Workers always have to have their facial hair neat and trimmed. Their nails always have to be trimmed back, and they can't have any visible piercings. They are super strict about this all. You can also get fired if you post something bad on social media about the company, if you're a face actor and you gain weight, or if you talk while in your costume. I mean, the last one I get, I don't want to be hugging Winnie the Pooh and then hear some old man talking. Anyways, this one employee said that he was fired from Disney after being caught eating a piece of popcorn that fell on their shirt. That's insane. I would be fired instantly if that's the case, because I make a mess while I'm eating and then I just always eat the crumbs off my shirt. Sorry, not sorry. It's just scary how controlling Disney is over their employees. Moving on to number 7, we have the Disney Point. Here's another ridiculous thing that Disney employees must do. No matter what, they always have to point with their index finger and middle finger. They can't point with just one finger because that's thought to be rude. So whenever they're showing people directions or something, they always have to point with 2 fingers. In fact, you could be fired if you're caught pointing with 1 finger. Coming in at number 6, we have the bullying. Now, working at Disney is often thought of as a dream job. There are so many characters that aspire to be a character at Disney. I hate to break it to you, but apparently the work environment is fairly toxic. According to multiple employees, there's a lot of bullying that takes place behind the scenes, especially when it comes to the character actors. So there is a sense of hierarchy there. The girls that played the recent popular Disney princesses like Anna and Elsa are thought of as top tier. They're at the top of this Disney social pyramid. Then we have the actors that play the older characters like Snow White, Mary Poppins, Gaston, Peter Pan, you get it. And at the bottom of the pyramid are the mascot characters. Apparently the mascot characters are treated so poorly by other cast members. So yeah, I don't know if I would ever want to work there. Like, I like teamwork and cooperation, not rivalry. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the water. So if you've been to Disney, then you know some rides are surrounded by water. According to employees, that water, although it may not look like that, is extremely polluted and filthy. From people throwing up in there, to trash, to animal poop, it's got it all. And I don't know how often it gets clean. If it looks clean to them, then it's good enough. So maybe think twice before getting on a ride that sprays you with water. In our 4th spot, we have the costumes. So in my last video, I talked about how some of the bigger and elaborate mascot costumes can't really get washed. So instead, they just spray it with disinfectant. Well, here's a fact that will gross you out even more. Back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would have to share with each other. So gross. Because of that, a lot of workers were passing around STIs and STDs and stuff. So that's when they stopped sharing underwear. Like, that is highly unsanitary, and I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. Moving on at number 3, we have the alligator problem. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. They still kind of do. But obviously, they didn't want park guests to worry about this, so they kept downplaying this problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015-2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. Now, they are taking it seriously and have increased their safety measures. Coming in at number 2, we have the dead body. So here's a fun fact. There is a dead body at Disneyland. Well, kind of. Let me explain. So according to employees, back in the day when the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was being built, they decided to use real human bones. Why? Because they thought that the fake bones looked too thick. Didn't look real enough, so they brought in real ones. Apparently, they got these bones from UCLA Medical School. The real bones were used for a while, then eventually they were swapped out for fake ones. But the skull and crossbones featured in the ride behind a skeleton lounging in bed are still real. And in our number 1 spot, we have the cursed ride. Now, according to multiple different employees, the Haunted Mansion ride is actually cursed. So it all started back in the day when a visitor died on the ride. At one point, he stood up to try and reach a part of the attraction, but ended up falling off the ride and plummeted to his death. Other eerie things have happened there that have led them to believe the ride is cursed. Like how in Disneyland Paris, a worker was found dead at their Phantom Manor ride, which is basically like the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. His body was found 2 days later after his death. His cause of death was apparently electrocution. Still, they think this is all because of the Haunted Mansion ride curse. To make matters worse, the ride uses an authentic 14th century spellbook containing real spells. So yeah, maybe this curse has something to do with that. Alright, starting off this countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break. And it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on to number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now this story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter. In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happened, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our 3rd spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our second spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops, like they're everywhere. Which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number one spot, we have The Battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the two workers in the store with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know.